Test.
One of the things that make comic books such an alluring part of one's childhood is the fact that they explore life beyond Earth in a way that scientists simply cannot explain. Aliens have been a mainstay of the comic book industry for close to a century now, but what makes the Viltrumites different is the sense of absolute strength that exudes from their very person. Superman was a complete goody two-shoes when he first debuted. He didn't develop the kind of commanding aura that a Nolan Grayson has until well into his lifetime as a published character. If anything, Nolan is what Kal-El would have been in a world with realistic intergalactic politics. Viltrumites represent the pinnacle of strength in the world of Invincible, and in this video we will take a detailed look at their anatomy and comparing it with those of some of the other might makes right species of aliens from the extended world of penciled entertainment. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The most powerful aliens of the Invincible universe, the basics of Viltrumite physiology. If you know anything about Invincible, you know that the Viltrumites are basically inspired by Kryptonians. They have super strength, they have nigh impenetrable skin, they can fly so fast they damn near rupture eardrums every time they take off. But there are several major differences between the two alien species anatomies, starting with the fact that Viltrumite strength isn't based on UV radiation, it's genetic. Kryptonian strength is contingent on the kind of sun that their base planet orbits around. Their bodies are genetically gifted with the ability to process all the radiation that comes off a sun into power beyond imagination. When they are exhausted or go through a near-death experience, they need to fly close to a sun to recharge their batteries, so to speak. There is no such condition placed upon the abilities of a Viltrumite, which makes their DNA truly unique within the universe. They have the power to bench press 100,000 tons like it was the lowest weight on a barbell. They have the speed to outpace intercontinental ballistic missiles and go from the North Pole to the South Pole in a matter of seconds. Their bodies are impervious to blades, bullets, and all sorts of extreme environmental conditions like molten lava or freezing tundra. They can live for centuries, and in some cases, millennia, if they weren't killed by someone as powerful as them in the first place. Much of the time, it was an internal dispute that led to such a death, because Viltrumite society was based on the concept of the strongest rules overall. Killing members of their own species was almost ritualistic for them to advance in their society, and Viltrumite funeral rites were basically a glorious last stand kind of deal. Any Viltrumite condemned to death is given all the treatment in the world to bring them to peak condition, so they can die fighting with the knowledge that they went out on a high. Considering they're usually executed by other Viltrumites, it makes the whole concept of undeniable strength a rather grim cup to drink out of. Viltrumites also possess extremely refined senses, to the point they can see and hear things that are several miles away from them, and are able to selectively mute out whatever they don't feel like hearing. Sure, they don't have X-ray vision that allows them to see through things, but telescopic vision is just as good, we'd argue. Above all, the one thing that makes Omni-Man's kinsmen the deadliest species in the universe is the fact that their bodies and minds are hardwired to keep improving at combat endlessly. If they fight someone once, they're able to neutralize them in every subsequent encounter because they've studied and memorized their attack patterns on an instinctual level, and they grow in combat potential at terrifying rates. Mark's speed and endurance increased over 50% between seasons 2 and 3. His strength increased 138% thanks to the training regimen Cecil had been putting him through. This is a lot like the Saiyan ability to grow through battle, which is exemplified by the prince of all Saiyans, Vegeta. Saiyans have to be at the verge of death to get a power boost, but Viltrumites just need recovery time, and they also recover much faster than Saiyans. Goku spent the equivalent of 167,000 Earth days in that healing chamber during the Namek arc, but it usually takes a Viltrumite a day at best to fix even the most grievous of injuries. Of course, there are cases where they've been injured so severely they've needed artificial replacements, but generally speaking, Viltrumites recover extremely fast, and as a slight bonus, they don't need to fly to the sun to get recharged. So those are the basic otherworldly powers of these genocidal maniacs who'd rather annihilate your planet than see you not bend the knee to them. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get into some specifics. How long do Viltrumites live? The physical strength of a species doesn't really matter as much if they don't live long enough to use it to its fullest extent. The Thraxans, for example, complete their entire life cycle in a single Earth year. Within 365 days, they're born, they live, and then they pass away, with their offspring repeating the cycle all over again. That is not the case of Viltrumites though, because if they can manage to keep themselves healthy and active, they can live forever from a technical standpoint. This is why there have only been two men who can call themselves the Emperor of Viltrum in the planet's history, which spans across several millennia. For 5,000 years, that man was Argol, the first emperor of the Viltrum Empire. Argol was a man who promoted wisdom and benevolence amongst his own people, but he was cruel and despotic towards all those he considered to be lesser beings. In many ways, Argol laid down the foundation for Viltrumite supremacist ideals, but that's a conversation for another video. Argol didn't die of natural causes. He was assassinated by a Viltrumite dissident, which only further reinforces the idea that they can only be killed by their kind, and not Father Time. In fact, their bodies actively fight against physical aging. Viltrumites age normally up until they reach their physical peak. Once that happens, their cells decelerate physical aging to such an extent that they look 30 years old for the rest of their lives. Spoiler alert if you don't know this, but Nolan himself is the secret son of the first emperor, and Argol was murdered several centuries before the current Invincible timeline. Yet he looks not a day older than his mid-30s, which is thanks to the way his species' genes work. Even hybrids that are supposed to have a much lower life expectancy because of their non-Viltrumite DNA live lives that are far longer than they would have expected. Nolan's second son, Oliver, is Thraxan on his mother's side. Like we mentioned at the beginning of this video, Thraxans live their entire lives within a single year, which makes them one of the most delicate sentient species in the universe. Oliver has already crossed that threshold, and yet he's only 12 years old, biologically and mentally. A rare occurrence for a Thraxan. He will keep growing exponentially until he fully matures, and then his father's DNA will slow down his aging exponentially. Oliver will be the longest living Thraxan in another year from a chronological perspective, and that's all because of his Viltrumite genes. Disease and illnesses will have no chance of shortening his lifespan or killing him, because his body is naturally resistant to all known pathogens, at least the ones humanity has come across, so he won't be dying of old age until he is put down by someone. That is the case for all of Nolan's people. Many of them have been living for thousands of years, like the current Emperor Thrag, without a single sign of stress or age-based fatigue on any of their bodies. In short, Viltrumites live long enough that one of them could have secretly recorded human history from ancient Egypt to the modern age without breaking a sweat. What does make them strain their immense physical powers, though, is flight, because flying in a planet's atmosphere is second nature to them, but flying through the vacuum of space is a completely different story. How can Viltrumites fly in space? Usually, flight is made possible for a Viltrumite thanks to their highly specialized equilibrium maintenance apparatus. In humans, the inner ear is crucial to maintaining balance and stability. If one of our ears were to get permanently damaged, we could get knocked loopy for the rest of our lives, because without properly functional ears, even walking in a straight line becomes an impossible task. And when we talk about something like flying through the sky, well, humans just aren't cut out for it. Our ears pop because of the difference in air pressure between the inside of a plane and the external environment. If we were to fly through the air, we'd likely perish, seeing as our bodies simply won't be able to withstand the change in pressure. Viltrumite bodies are built in such a way that pressure difference does not affect their flight, allowing them to fly at supersonic speeds without bursting their own eardrums. But that isn't nearly as impressive as the fact that all of them can fly through the vacuum of space by doing something as simple as holding their breath. Humanity would have no chance at surviving the galactic blanket without specialized equipment like astronaut suits, because the absence of an atmosphere is so much worse than having a sulfuric one. If Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin's spacesuits failed during the Apollo mission, we'd have a dead man walking on the moon, because you can't breathe when there's nothing to breathe. If you try to breathe in a vacuum, your lungs will collapse and you will freeze to death almost immediately after. Even if you manage to hold your breath, how long do you think you will will survive in -270 degrees Celsius? Apparently, the answer for a Viltrumite is 2 weeks, not because their skin will give out after that, but because they'll need to take another breath. In the Superman comics, one of the most impressive things about him is the fact that he can live off of a single held breath for over a week. This allows him to survive things like poisonous gases, underwater supervillain chases, and yes, even flights through space. He needs to stop at a planet with a breathable atmosphere every so often. But also, long as he can make a close enough flyby to take that breath recharge, he can keep flying from one place to another until he reaches a whole other galaxy. Viltrumites can do the same thing, except they can hold their breath for over 2 weeks, and that makes all the difference in the world. They have no need of creating gigantic spacecraft carriers and invest a planet's worth of resources into making them breathable. They can simply hold their breath for a fortnight, and a lot can happen in a fortnight. Wars break out, governments topple, the world forgets how it used to communicate, and that's just on planet Earth. Interstellar space travel is one of the strongest aspects of the Viltrumite anatomy, and it also is a cornerstone of their invasion policy. Their sleeper agents protect their target worlds from all other threats, including and especially alien ones. Nolan did many a patrol loop of the Earth's orbit trying to kill any stragglers or hangers-on that wanted in on his race's glory. Spaceflight is key to Viltrumite dominance, and the fact that they can hold their breath twice as long as Superman is sort of sending our minds to the era 404 page. But now that we have discussed most things about their general physiology, let's look into a couple of highly specific aspects. Can Viltrumites reproduce with every species in existence? Interbreeding between two entirely different species of living creatures is one of the biggest obsessions of science fiction. Just the thought of an alien impregnating you is scary, isn't it? And most of the time, it is used as a device to induce horror. People are afraid of the unknown, and what's more unknown than a green-skinned Martian trying to mate with you as his eyes burn bright red? Even Superman has gone back and forth between being able to reproduce with humans and then not being able to reproduce with humans. Many issues in the Superman pantheon have pointed out that Kryptonian cells are not compatible with human cells, which is why Clark can't have babies with Lois. But many other issues have shown that he can. In one of them, he loses his powers, and in a storyline that sounds like an alternate reality, Superman has kids with Lana Lang. John Kent and Jonathan Kent are the most well-known organic hybrid sons of his, because Connor from Titans is a clone created by mixing Kal-El's DNA with Lex Luthor's. Genetic engineering and storytelling choices have been the kryptonite to Kryptonian reproduction in Superman lore, but in the world of Invincible, it's more of a choice. That's because Viltrumite DNA is so strong that it simply overwrites the gene code of any non-Viltrumite mate, wiping out any trace of their original species. The reason they don't mate outside their own is because of their supremacist ideals. Every son and daughter of Viltrum thinks themselves above the rest of the universe, so deigning someone with their seed or womb was just out of the question. In fact, Nolan only mated with Debbie because humans are 99% similar to Viltrumites from a genetic standpoint, making them the most similar to them in terms of biology. The Viltrum Empire had a long-standing policy of only allowing interbreeding with alien races that were similar or nearly identical to their own. This policy had been handed down for so long that when Nolan met the Thraxan Andressa and fell in love with her, he questioned whether they could even have a child together. Well, turns out they can, because Oliver was born shortly after they consummated their relationship. His purple skin is proof that Viltrumite DNA can't completely remove every trace of the non-Viltrumite mate's DNA. But Oliver also doesn't look like an anthropomorphic praying mantis, and he will only become more like his father the longer he lives. In the comics, after becoming an adult, Oliver's skin takes on a more lilac hue, suggesting that Nolan's DNA was fighting off Andressa's like a cancer. Their uniquely virile sexual potency makes them capable of reproducing with most sentient species in the universe, which takes on a whole different meaning when you think of it from a colonizer's perspective. What's the ultimate form of dominance over a species? You interbreed with it to the point that there's nothing left of the original race. At the same time, you indoctrinate the hybrids into becoming proud sons of Viltrum, and boom, you have soldiers and loyal subjects, no matter how terrified the latter might be of you. This potency had allowed the Empire to spread to the farthest reaches of the universe. But then again, with great power comes great hubris. The Viltrumites might be ridiculously OP, but just like every living thing, they have their weaknesses, and exploiting those weaknesses allowed the good guys to wipe out 99.9% of their population. What are the weaknesses of the Viltrumites? Viltrumites have skin so thick and minds so resilient that sequids can't take over their bodies or shatter their minds. Sequids are like the Starro of the Invincible verse, except they look way grosser with their brain-like heads. But a Viltrumite's body isn't impervious to everything in the universe, and their insides are most certainly not built to last. There are about half a dozen weaknesses that afflict their entire species, so let's start with the most natural one there is, another alien race. Now, most alien races simply don't have the strength to withstand a Viltrumite onslaught, but Battle Beast and Rognar are two aliens that are perfectly capable of killing Viltrumites. Their raw strength isn't exactly what gets the job done, it's their specialized body parts. Rognar in particular has claws and teeth that can rip apart a Viltrumite as easily as they rip apart other species. But you know, we're just trying to convey our meaning here. Although both the characters we just mentioned are perfectly capable of killing Viltrumites, they haven't, because the latter's battle IQ was just too high to work around. That isn't the case with Space Racer, whose Infinity Ray can cut through literally anything in the universe, including the bodies of Viltrumites. Space Racer's gun emits an everlasting beam of energy that is so concentrated that it can treat diamond like paper and cut right through it. He is one of the biggest alien threats to the Empire, as he possesses the only weapon capable of killing them from the outside. If a character can outwit them and stuff a bomb down their throats, chances are they can feasibly kill them by blowing them inside out. This was demonstrated in The Boys, when Butcher blew up Translucent by shoving C4 up his behind, where he'd broken a few saw drills trying to cut him earlier in the day. We don't want to spoil things too much for you, so we'll just say that there will soon come a point in the Amazon series where you will see this play out in action, and you'll think the show is over, but trust us, it'll only get better from there. So protecting their insides is a major priority for Viltrumites, as is being hyper-vigilant of any kind of biologically engineered weapon. There was a time when Nolan's people killed each other to advance through the ranks of society, but that changed when they were hit with a virus specifically made to target their cells. Remember how we said that the first emperor was assassinated? Well, the Viltrumite who assassinated him went on to found the largest coalition of planets that resists their expansion, and after several years of experimentation, he was able to finally engineer a virus capable of infecting the biologically immune. When Thaddeus unleashed the Scourge virus upon his people, only 37 survived out of millions, and Nolan Grayson was one of them. This led to the development of the custom of giving Viltrumites a full-body workup before execution, and the passing of a decree that no Viltrumite will kill another Viltrumite. As powerful as it was, the Scourge virus was an artificial solution for a natural problem. If Thaddeus wasn't involved in its creation, we doubt the Viltrum Empire would be desperate for a relocation right about now. But apart from what we've mentioned so far, there are three other natural ways to kill a Viltrumite. That is, with sound, heat, and by weakening them with the poison from the Klaxus plant. In theory, this plant is just a space version of the weeds that ravage your home garden, but it was discovered that Klaxus can poison and weaken Viltrumites just enough to make any fight with them an even fight. The coalition of planets ends up using Klaxus in its response to the Viltrum Empire's aggressive expansion, and to great effect. That's not the only way their biochemistry can be turned against them. The highly refined balancing mechanism of their inner ears can be used against them by exposing them to a frequency of sound waves high enough to cause brain damage. When Mark fought the Depth Dweller, he was incapacitated by its screams because water makes sound carry a lot better than air, and he has a physiological predisposition to being sensitive to sound. Cecil ended up weaponizing this against him as a precaution, and we're seeing the results of that play out in Season 3 right now. Apart from ultra-high frequency sound waves, what can also kill a Viltrumite is ultra-high levels of heat. Now, when we say heat, we don't mean lava, obviously, because they can brush that aside like it's nothing. No, we're talking about the heat of the sun, and the off chance that a Viltrumite decides to take a bath in its plasma soup. Where Kryptonians become stronger thanks to a sun, Viltrumites have no such abilities, so their bodies react how they should normally, just on a much slower level. Our skins would melt way before we even reach the sun halfway off of Mercury. Viltrumites can have solo duels on the sun's surface with the lethal drawback of their skin and flesh melting to nothingness. It takes that much heat to break through the seemingly invulnerable body of Nolan's species, but it can be done, and it is done in the comics. That battle is climactic to the series though, so we won't talk about it too much right now. Just know that when it happens, you'll understand why Omni-Man is not Superman, and we say that with the utmost respect. We think Viltrumites are a lot more realistic than Kryptonians in the scope of things that they can do with their bodies, because the latter are just ridiculously overpowered. Apart from sharing all the baseline Viltrumite powers, they can also see through walls, melt things with their eyes, freeze things with their breath, and the sun only increases the intensity of these abilities. Sure, Superman is vulnerable to kryptonite, and Kryptonians didn't need that rock to die in the first place, but his face won't melt off if he enters the sun. Nolan and Mark's will, so that automatically makes them weaker than Kryptonians. When it comes to Saiyans, it's difficult to gauge exactly how they will match up in Super Saiyan forms, but we can comfortably say that the Viltrumites stand no chance against Goku and Vegeta's god forms. So while they might be the strongest in their own universe, Viltrumites are the weakest out of them, Kryptonians and Saiyans, which to us is a good thing. All these weaknesses make them seem more like a realistic race of aliens with insane powers rather than cartoons that were obviously conceived for entertainment. That's why we love Invincible so much and can't wait to see how Season 3 unfolds. But now that we've explained the strengths and weaknesses of a Viltrumite's anatomy, we guess there's just one thing left. Marvelous verdict. And that is thanking you guys for sticking with us for so long, because we know this was a bit of a head spinner. We hope we've done justice to the title though, and we want to know what you guys think. So let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more Invincible content. We will see you guys in the next one, so till then, take care and have a great day.